Problems arose. Problems arose. Sorry, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Zuma, yes.
I just, 2 points I just wanted to
make.
add.
Yes.
Yes. I forgot to mention the name of the movie that is being done by Reddy in the United States.
Yes.
Because I think it is important to have the name of the movie. Crossing with my the name of the movie is Raped by Power.
Raped by Power.
Raped by Power.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I thought there's a second point.
Yeah,
Yes.
Second point, when I talked about Ralph, who had organized an attack when he was to be confronted, because the reason why you had that attack, he had been arrested by the Swazi police and leaked information about the work they are doing in Swaziland. And then his commander, the commander of the group, and other members of the group were very agitated about this. Why did he give information to the Swazis? So they...
That would be to the Swazi government.
Swazi government, yeah,
Yes.
when he was arrested.
Okay.
He then, the commander said, let us go to Maputo so that we can discuss this much. Knowing that he was going to Maputo, he then phoned his handler in South Africa to say he must be rescued. He's being taken to Maputo. They might perhaps never see him again. So he needed them to undertake an operation against his colleagues. So he gave them description of where they were sleeping. They would have woken up at about 4-ish to walk while it's still dark to cross to Mozambique. And he told them where he was sleeping and where everybody was sleeping. So the attack happened to his window with a canister.
Through his window.
Yeah, through his window.
Yes.
But he went out through that window and nothing happened to him. And even the bed was never, the bed showed that nobody had ever opened the blankets or come. He was sleeping on top of it, which means he was waiting for these people. Then in the morning, he was detained by the Swazis once again. Then a few days after the detention, conniving both Swazis and the security police from here wanted to release him because he was very important. But they wanted to test the waters as to, is he being suspected of this or what? And they did something and asked somebody, when he comes out after arrest, somebody to hug him as they greet. That hug was important because it will be saying he's innocent. In other words, nobody's angry for him that he might be responsible for this. The information was, so that hug was arranged by the police. And somebody who hugged him had been given instructions to do so. And that was General Sipho Nyanda.
Yes.
Yeah,
Those are the 2 points. Okay, thank you. You will be asked questions by Mr. Pretorius. I will also ask questions from time to time. If there is anything any question you don't understand, say so, and it will be repeated or clarified. Thank you. Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Zuma. Chair, before asking questions, before making a few remarks,
Yes.
I believe it's important for the legal team itself to place certain matters on record, given what
Yes.
has been said this morning and what might be said in future.
Yes.
It may be that some of the matters that I want to raise now, place on record now, have already been placed on record by yourself, but I do believe it's important that the legal team too place its position on record. The first point is that this commission is, at this stage at least, investigating matters covered by the terms of reference. It's an investigation. That means it's not a trial where we seek to prove a predetermined or pleaded or charged case. And for that reason, too, there's no cross-examination. Cross-examination can only take place by prior permission granted by you, Chair, and it's not likely that we will ask for such. Our terms of reference mandate us to investigate various matters under the broad heading State Capture, Fraud and Corruption. And it's pursuant to that mandate that you, Chair, have invited Mr. Zuma to attend. Firstly, to assist the Commission by presenting to the Commission his version, the facts as he sees them and his understanding of those facts, as well as relevant matters connected with those issues. And in particular, the correspondence preceding and at the time of the invitation to Mr. Zuma specifies matters raised in the evidence of a list of specified witnesses, and I'll list those in due course. And the second point is that your invitation invited Mr. Zuma to answer questions in relation to those matters. And the wording of the invitation is specific. It's matters raised by the witnesses which have mentioned Mr. Zuma or are related to him in one way or another. Ultimately, it's Mr. Zuma's knowledge, experience, and own alleged involvement in matters raised before this Commission that we seek to investigate further. The witnesses specified in the correspondence in relation to whom, or in relation to evidence, questions will be asked are Mr. Maseko, Ms. Mentor, Minister Nene, or former Minister Nene, rather, Minister Gordhan, Ms. Hogan, Mr. Ramatlodi, Mr. Muofi, Mr. Mbalula, and Minister Mbalula and Mr. Agritzi. Those are the witnesses to whom questions will be limited. Perhaps at another occasion, Mr. Zuma, questions will be asked in relation to the evidence of other witnesses. But it has been stated specifically in correspondence to the former President that questions related to the evidence of those witnesses and matters raised by such witnesses to which Mr. Zuma may be related in one way or another may be asked. Then, Mr. Zuma,
you are done. Before you ask
Yes.
any questions, maybe I must just also make this point clear that now that we have referred to the fact that Mr. Zuma was invited here, let me make it clear the decision to ask Mr. Zuma to appear here was mine and mine alone. And I believed it was the right thing. I want to hear his side of the story, but also I want an opportunity for the Commission to put questions to him. The correspondence that was exchanged can be taken as from me as well. So if there is any criticism, it can be directed to me. Thank you.
Mr. Zuma, to begin, we've heard the narrative and the evidence that you've given this morning, and we would appreciate time to consider it in its full detail. But from the legal team's point of view, we can assure you that insofar as the issues you have raised fall within our terms of reference, as they appear at first glance to fall within our terms of reference, we will investigate further, and we trust with your assistance. But as I understand it, you say that in the early 90s, a conspiracy or plan, and you've used both words, was hatched, and you've used the words to get rid of you. And you've also told the chair that that conspiracy or plan was hatched by two foreign intelligence agencies in conjunction with a South African intelligence agency. Is that correct? Yes. What happened to you, as narrated by you between the early 90s and now, some 29 years, has largely been part of the execution of this plan or conspiracies. I understand your evidence. If you would say yes, because your
Yes.
nod won't be picked up.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Zuma.
Okay, yes.
And do I understand you correctly to say, and this is what might bring your evidence squarely within the terms of reference of this commission, that this commission itself is the culmination of that conspiracy?
Yes, I said so.
Yes. The evidence of the 9 witnesses that I have mentioned, I'm happy to repeat them if you wish. You may want me to do so. Has that evidence formed part of this conspiracy? Generally speaking, we can get to the detail in a moment.
No, I did not necessarily say it forms part from them as individuals. And I'm not saying it doesn't, because they came here on specific details. I think my contention is that the manner in which the public protector was asked to investigate this specific matter, and when she had no money, she was given money to do so. And I think carefully crafted how to name it. So I'm saying the commission. I'm not saying whoever comes here to give evidence is therefore part of that one, except when I was talking about one individual who said I've auctioned the country.
Well, that question perhaps can be more fully answered when we talk about the evidence in more detail. Thank you. The first witness on the list is Mr. Maseko, who gave evidence before this commission. In recent days, a set of documents was handed to your legal representatives. There were 2 bundles. Chair, you have the 2 bundles. It's bundle GGA and bundle GGB.
Yes, I do have, but I see that Mr. Zuma doesn't have anything.
Yes, so
I think his
that's why
counsel.
I'm introducing them now, Chair.
I think let me hear his counsel. I think he indicates he wants to say something about it.
Chair,
Yes.
I don't have the documents and he doesn't.
Oh. My understanding, Mr. Skakan, my understanding is that 2 liver arch files were served on your instructing attorney about 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you know.
Well, he's here because
Yeah.
I don't have them and I've asked him. I'll ask him
Yes.
to deal with the question. I don't have them and I don't know whether Mr. Zuma.
Yes.
I don't know them. Mr. Mancho is here.
Okay, no, that's fine. Mr. Pretorius?
They were delivered on the 1st of July to the offices of Mr. Mancha, the attorneys of record of the former president.
Do we have any proof of receipt?
Well, we can obtain. Just get it. We'll obtain it now, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Skakan.
Chair, maybe let me raise this because it's the problem I was trying to avoid.
Yes.
It's truly the problem. Until the 24th of June, and I saw the acrimonious correspondence, I was not a party to that, is that I think when that broke down, that relationship we were trying, when it broke down, I believe that when we asked the Commission about details, even these files that are delivered only after you've undertaken to come if they were delivered, these files could have been given to us earlier. Really, I don't see, unless they have stuff that only came then. I'm just raising this because I think it's important that this process is not run like an ambush, so that it must assist you, Chairperson.
Yes.
And the fact that these documents, unless you are told by Mr. Pretorius that they contain things they obtained later, there is absolutely no reason why they could not have been given earlier, and the problem we were complaining about could have been averted. And I don't have them, and that's why I keep saying,
Yes.
Mr. Mancha may deal with them.
Yes.
But this is how the commission wants to deal with it.
My understanding is that they were prepared as a matter of caution because there was an understanding that your instructing attorney had indicated that not all the witness statements had been received by him, and they were prepared to include all witness statements and annexures that were deemed relevant, so that whichever ones he might not have received would be there. My understanding is that from the commission's side, apparently maybe one had not been sent, otherwise the rest had been sent, but Mr. Pretorius can talk more. But we will have to find a way of how to make sure there is fairness.
I think so, Chair, and I think the correspondence between the two attorneys here, I think it can improve, because it's beginning to affect
Yes,
an innocent witness.
yes. No, thank you. Mr. Pretorius?
Well, Chair, to answer the later question first, there is an acknowledgement on the 1st of July 2019 of receipt of the two files. I can hand that up if you wish. But also an electronic copy of the evidence bundle was sent on the 1st of July as well. But I don't understand that to be disputed now, rather the timing of the delivery appears to be an issue.
Yes.
May I just say that I can go through all the witnesses of the 9 in detail, but perhaps only in relation to Mr. Maseko. A Rule 33 notice was sent on the 2nd of August 2018 to the attorneys of the former president. Delivery confirmation was received on the 3rd of August 2018, and attached to the delivery were the two statements of Mr. Maseko. A full evidence bundle in relation to annexures was sent on the 17th of August 2018. So all this documentation in relation to Mr. Maseko was sent last year in August and was responded to in the sense that there is written confirmation of the fact that the documentation and the statements were considered, and it was felt that Mr. Zuma was not implicated thereby. But be that as it may, it leaves us in the position now when, for some reason or another, and I don't think the fault can be laid at the door of the Commission at all, the witness is unprepared. There are two ways of dealing with that. I can deal with the questions more slowly and in relation to each document or piece of the witness's evidence, allow Mr. Zuma time to consider it. But other than that, I'm not sure that there's any reason to delay these proceedings any further.
Maybe what we should do is I should adjourn maybe for a few minutes to allow you and counsel for Mr. Zuma to look at whether there are any documents in these two files that they have never received, because obviously those that they had received, and since it was specified which witnesses we would be dealing with, they would have had those. And therefore, whatever preparation they might have needed to do, they would have been in possession of those. But just in case there may be some witness statements or other documents that they never received, even or before the two leave-out files were sent. Because if it is maybe one or two one or two statements that we can see whether those can be dealt with much later in the week or not. So that's
Well,
what I'm,
Just one qualification, Chair.
yes,
This afternoon, we will deal hopefully with Mr. Maseko. Their
Yes.
two statements were given with a full bundle. In bundle
Yes.
GG,
Yes.
two statements were given.
Yes.
So that's a fairly easy equation to deal with.
yes.
To go through each and every document will take quite
Fine.
some time to complete.
So your suggestion is that you restrict your questions for this afternoon to Mr. Masego,
Yes.
and then we adjourn, and that gives opportunity for documents that the legal team for Mr. Zuma might not have received to be identified.
Yes. In fact, in relation to Mr. Maseko, more documents were sent last year than were given on the 1st of July.
Yes.
But I'm told that
Mr. Mancha wants to say
Mr.
something.
Mancha wants to address you.
Yes, Mr. Mancha.
Thank you, Chairperson. You made mention that you have directed the correspondences, specifically the invite to the former president. If I were to take you back a little bit, during the engagements we had in chambers, wherein I actually raised complaints that the former president, who was in office when the commission was appointed, was not even asked or to be consulted of anything on the matter. But coming to the point, after I have requested the commission to actually give us the parameters of what the president, former president, is going to be asked upon. My last letter dated the 24th June 2019. At the bottom of that letter, after we made all attempts to actually try to find the best way to prepare the former president in terms of the areas where the commission is going to ask. And why did we do that, Chair? We did that because we were part of the proceedings of these commissions. And when you then say to me, the former president is here, or you will be asked, as my learned colleague read the list, Mr. Maseko, Mentor, and so forth. We ask the questions. What are the questions that you're going to ask? And the reason why we ask the questions is simply because, say for example, Ms. Mentor, before you, she told you she could not, the commission could not confirm that she has left Cape Town to Johannesburg. The commission could not confirm that she has left Johannesburg for Cape Town. The commission, the recollection of the Gupta's residence, the expert witness of the commission contradicted her recollection that she apparently does not seem to have appeared into the place. So I'm saying this because it's important we were asking these questions to say, are you really calling him to answer things that it was proved before the commission and proved before everybody who is following this proceeding that that witness there is no proof?
Well, Mr. Mancha, right now the question is relates to documents that that the legal team says.
Indeed, Chair, I'm getting there.
Yes.
I'm getting there because, as I've mentioned to you, my letter of the 24th, I then said to the commission, we're trying to facilitate that these proceedings will be conducted in a spirit of the true people who are pursuing the truth, not the people who are pursuing some of what the former president has been saying. And when that was rebuffed by this commission, The last sentence on the letter was, "We are out of this engagement," which meant whatever the commission attempted to bring to my office, the commission was doing so in its own peril, because I have formally informed the commission that since my attempts to try to have the smooth running of this, the appearance of the former president, you're not interested. Therefore, I washed my hands out of it. So whatever you can bring to my office was done at the commission peril, and then the commission has to deal with. But what I can say to you, in terms of the notices which have been sent to my offices, in terms of Maseko and others, we confirm those notices. But what is important, as I was saying to you, when you get a notice that you are implicated, surely you expect that there is a content that implicates you in legal sense of the word. So, even though what I'm saying, you say we are only concerned with the documents, it's more than documents, because we wanted to say, do you want to ask us about poisons? He never implicated us. You want to ask us about Sindani? You gave us the notice, they've never implicated us.
Mr. Mancha, let's stick to what is at issue. It is true that the last sentence of your letter said the commission was not going to receive any further correspondence from you, but it did not say you were withdrawing as Mr. Zuma's attorneys.
Indeed, Chair. But the point we're making, we disengaged as far as the appearance of the former president was concerned, because we have attempted to discuss the documentations, to discuss the question, and all of that was rebuffed. So when the former president comes here and talks to you of a grand narrative, these are some of the things that when we look from where we sit, as reflected on the correspondences, to say, but why should people who are looking for truth would ask a person to come?
No, Mr. Mancha. You have made the point you wanted to make about the documents, that you had notified the commission that it would not receive any further correspondence from you. You have considered that you had not withdrawn as his attorney of record, and I understand it, the commission secretariat then made sure that the documents were served on you or on your offices, because from the point of view of the commission, you remained his attorney of record and they could not liaise directly with him.
But with respect, Chairperson, the commission has got no license to do whatever it wishes. The commission was informed in writing that as far as this aspect is concerned, we disengaged because the commission was not cooperating with us. I think I have made my point.
Yes, you have.
As the former president stated, this matter runs very deep. So there are other deeper things we would want to submit to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancha. Thank you. Mr. Skakan.
I think in the interest of this process and time, I would allow, I think Mr. Paul Pretorius must proceed.
Yes.
And take it to where he wants to take it.
Yes, he suggested that maybe we deal with the evidence relating to Mr. Maseko only, and then after that, then discussions can be looked at.
Chair,
Would that be fine?
I have no problem. As I said, I haven't seen the documents, but
Yes,
I take it from
yes.
his statements that we
Yes.
know. I think
Yes.
it's important that.
Yes, no, that's, I think that would be fair to do. We will keep on trying to be as fair as possible. We might not always get it right, but we will continue to try and do our best.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Zuma, I'm sure you have been following. There were certain documents that the Secretariat of the Commission sent to your attorneys, but you have heard what the instructing attorney has done. But there seems to be an acceptance that, at least in regard to Mr. Masego's statement that was sent off last year, and Mr. Pretorius has suggested that he will not deal with other witnesses this afternoon. He'll just deal with Mr. Masego, so that after that, the lawyers can talk to each other to see how to sort out the issue of the other documents. Thank you. Mr. Pretorius.
Yes, just for clarity, to close off this part of the debate, Chair, the letter from Mr. Mancha, dated the 24th of June, said in the last paragraph, accordingly, you will receive no further correspondence from us in this regard, and we wish the Commission well. Unless Mr. Mancha revoked his mandate and withdrew his attorney of record in the interim without informing us and leaving us under the impression through the delivery of documents to him that he remained on record without reply, and then has suddenly come on record, one can draw the conclusion that he has been attorney of record throughout. Mr. Zuma, may I beg leave to hand up to you the 2 bundles of documents? And I undertake to deal with the questions insofar as they are matters within your own knowledge, slowly and in a manner in which you are hopefully not taken by surprise. But please, if there's any document you wish to read or there's any time you need to consider matters, we will do our best to make sure that the proceedings are fair.
Thank you. Which one? Okay.
So that is, you have before you 2 files.
Yes.
Bundle GGA, and on the spine it's marked former president, and your name follows. Do you see? Bundle AA.
GGA. Yes, is this one?
Okay, so you can put GGB aside for the moment.
Okay.
We will deal with just the few pages in divider 1 in GGA.
Okay.
If you look at page 2, and when we refer to pages, we'll be referring to the pages in red in the top right-hand corner. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So page 2 is the affidavit of Mr. Maseko. You have that?
Yes.
In paragraph 2, he says, I have been requested to provide an affidavit relating to the report that I submitted to the Public Protector in relation to the so-called state capture investigation. Then in paragraph 3 and 4, he continues, he says, I first submitted the statement in response to the call by the Secretary General of the South African National Congress, Mr. Gwede Mantashe, which statement was subsequently submitted to the Public Protector's office. This statement, and he refers to the statement in paragraph 3, provides details of my experience with the Gupta family during my tenure as accounting officer and the Chief Executive Officer of the Government Communication and Information System, GCIS. The process that is referred to in paragraph 3 That is the submission of the statement in response to the call by the Secretary General of the African National Congress. Do you know what process that was?
I'm not sure. At some point, I don't know whether this refers to the ANC taking a decision that the Secretary General should investigate this matter.
Yes. That is our understanding of the matter.
Okay.
And we'd like to find out from you, Mr. Zuma, what you know about that process. Firstly, what was the mandate given to Mr. Mantashe? And who gave him that mandate?
Well, I can't be very certain about it, but I thought that it was the meeting of the ANC-NEC, I would imagine, that had taken the kind of decision. And I was not in that meeting.
And what decision did they take?
That Mantashe must do some investigation about the Gupta things that people were complaining about.
And that complaint, was that the complaint that arose in the petition submitted to the then Minister Gordon and copied to yourself from the 27 Directors General?
From?
The Directors General who submitted a petition to the former Minister of Finance, Mr. Pravin Gordhan. I can show you the document if you want to see it, so you can refresh your memory.
Maybe let me also just ask, have you had a chance recently to read Mr. Masego's statement to refresh your memory?
Yes, I'd look at it.
You have, okay.
Yeah.
This may assist you before we take matters any further, and if you want to take a few moments to read it, please
Take it.
request same and we'll arrange that through the chair. This document was included in the bundle, Chair, that was given last year.
Yes.
Do you want to take a minute to read that document?
Mm-hmm.
The document is headed Statement by Former Directors General. We will give it an exhibit number.
It was already given an exhibit number previously, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes, so we should stick to that exhibit number.
right. We will
Yeah,
refer
otherwise
it's,
there will be confusion.
page 75 in another bundle. I must just check. I think it's E1. So
Was
it can be referred
given
to as
as
Exhibit E1,
E1?
page 75. So it's bundle E1, page 75 to 81.
Is it one document?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. You asked him whether he wanted to to read it and have a look. I say it's quite an extensive. It's about what, 4 or 5 pages?
Yes, Chair.
Don't you want to highlight certain things in it that could refresh his memory?
Mr. Zuma, shall we do that?
Okay.
If you look at paragraph 1, it reads, a group of former Directors General felt compelled to address the recent developments that are having a negative impact on the capacity of the state to provide quality services and eroding public confidence in public institutions. And this is a statement that is made during May 20, was embargoed for publication until May 2016, I think it says. It's not clear from the top, but
It's written embargoed for publication on Sunday, 15 May
16, I'm told.
2016, yeah.
The second paragraph reads, and this is by way of introduction, Mr. Zuma, we had the rare honor in history to not only work administratively to dismantle apartheid, but also in crafting a new legal framework passed by our parliament and entrenched in our constitutional framework. Through these measures, democratic institutions were established. Our initiative to speak as former accounting officers today is driven by our shared commitment to our constitutional democracy. This is not a party political initiative, and we don't consider the matters we are raising to be party political in nature. The third paragraph in the introduction reads, as former Directors General, we brought a collective commitment to serve and dismantle the apartheid state machinery and replaced it with democratic institutions that were informed by democratic values, social justice, fundamental human rights, and a deep desire to improve the quality of life of all South Africans. And then, under the heading Our Concerns, on the second page of the document, that's page 76 of E1, Mr. Zuma, it reads, as former Director Generals, we are concerned about reports that public officials, including heads of state-owned entities, are being pressurized by private interests to willfully break procurement rules and the rules pertaining to transparent, fair, and competency-based appointments. In particular, we express concern at recent revelations of alleged state capture, and that's in inverted commas, by the Gupta family, their apparent influence over political and administrative appointments, and their alleged involvement in the irregular facilitation, securing, and issuing of government tenders and contracts. It then goes on in the second paragraph, Mr. Zuma, on page 76, a number of alleged corrupt practices that have been brought to the public's attention that are tantamount to breaking laws such as the Constitution, the PFMA, that's the Public Finance Management Act, Preferential Procurement Policy Framework, and Public Service Regulations. The next heading is a call for action, and they call for the establishment of an independent public inquiry in terms of Section 41A of the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, and they suggest how that should be achieved. And then on the third page, Mr. Zuma, page 77, it reads in the second paragraph, this inquiry should investigate all senior political and administrative officials who may, in their dealings with the Guptas and associated companies, have contravened the Constitution, the PFMA, and the Public Service Act as amended. We recommend that this commission be established within 3 months to give a public progress report within 6 months. Then there are a number of other statements made calling upon various officials to do various things. They say in the penultimate paragraph on page 78, we have initiated a consultative process with key stakeholders that we believe can help to ensure that the inquiry is assisted to achieve the goal of uncovering incidents of corruption and other forms of illegal activities. Then the final paragraph on page 79 reads, unless these challenges are attended to urgently, our country may be plunged into a crisis of governance and lead to the collapse of public services in general at the expense of delivering quality services to our community. Annexed to that document, dated the 22nd of April 2016, is the statement of the former Directors General. Do you see that on page 80, Mr. Zuma? It's dated the 22nd of April 2016. It's addressed to the Minister of Finance, Minister Pravin Gordhan, the Minister of Public Service and Administration, Minister Ramatlodi, and copied to yourself, the President of the Republic of South Africa and the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa. Firstly, do you recall receiving this document? Do you want a chance to look at it as well? It's in small print, but it's 2 pages.
Yes, I know. I don't recall. I received so many documents.
I understand. Perhaps we should start by going to the 4th paragraph on page 80. We submit this memorandum, they say, and we'll get to the signatories in a moment, to express our collective concern at recent revelations of state capture by the Gupta family, their apparent influence over political and administrative appointments, and their involvement in the irregular facilitation, securing, and issuing of government tenders and contracts. We also express our concern at the effect of the recent Constitutional Court judgment in the Nkandla matter. That's not directly relevant to what we're doing at the moment. Then in the next paragraph they say, whilst noting the initiative undertaken by the ANC to conduct an internal inquiry, we as former accounting officers believe that to the extent that the issues raised are of an administrative nature, there are adequate provisions within the PFMA and the PSA, the Public Service Act, that make it obligatory for these allegations to be addressed. And what follows in the next paragraph is the same call for an independent public inquiry in terms of Section 4 of the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act. And many of the allegations or the statements on page 81 follow what we've already put on record, Mr. Zuma. If I may then point out at the bottom of page 81 is the list of signatories, and that list has been confirmed by at least 2 witnesses, or at least 1 witness, Mr. Maseko. And if I may place them on record, it's Frank Chikani, Barry Gilder, Ketso Gordhan, Totsi Gwanya, Roger Jardine, Temba Maseko, Mzuvukile Makutuka, Mokopodi Makwena,
Msuvukile Maqethuka.
Itumeleng Masala, Mpumi Mpofu, Mavuso Msimang, Andile Nkaba, Gibson and Genji, Bongiwe and Jobi, Ayande and Salube, Sipiwe and Nyanda, Deepak Patel, Maleli Picha, Vusi Pekoli, Sipo Petiana, Alistair Reiters, Sipo Shabalala, Poliswa Sibeko, Mo Sheikh, Lyndall Shopi Mafole, Vincent Zwelibanzi Mtambo, and Pam Yako. Are there any names in that list who would fall into the category of persons that you referred to this morning as being part of a plan to, quote, get rid of you, Mr. Zuma?
Sorry, just repeat. I was still reading.
Are there any persons on this list that would fall into the category of persons you referred to this morning as persons being part of a plan or conspiracy to, and I use your words, to get rid of you?
I think, Chair, through you,
Yes.
the plan, I said, it was done by 3 intelligence organizations who did what they did. I said activities undertaken, and I did not say those people who took the undertaking, they were part of the plan or they planned it. I said the plan was made, there were people to implement it. I didn't give the list of those people. I dealt with instances where things happened, and this was part of the plan. I didn't say the people doing it were part of the plan. I didn't say so.
Well, can we just understand then what your view of this request for a public inquiry was? In fact, was it a genuine concern expressed by former Directors General in order to ask certain officials within government to institute an inquiry? Can we accept that?
Yes, I'm accepting it. I mean, that's what they did.
And that appears to be the background, or at least circumstances associated with the evidence of Mr. Maseko on page 2, where he says he submitted a statement in response to a call by the Secretary General of the African National Congress. That, as I understand your evidence, was the internal inquiry commissioned by the ANC itself.
Yes.
Are you able to tell us more about that inquiry? Again, to revert to an earlier question, its mandate, and whether you received any reports as to how the inquiry went, and what happened as a result of the inquiry?
No, in fact, I can't recall what happened to that inquiry. I can't recall right now.
Do you know whether statements other than that of Mr. Maseko were made to the inquiry?
No, I don't remember any other.
Did you know of the existence of the inquiry?
Sorry?
Did you know of the existence of the inquiry?
Yes.
And
Was
did
aware
you
of
take any note of its outcome?
I can't remember. What was the outcome? I can't remember.
Presumably, in his capacity as the chair of the inquiry, Mr. Mantashe would have reported to you. Do you recall any such report?
There might have been a report, but I don't remember right now. I know that Mr. Mantashe was given that. I can't remember whether there was a report back or not.
Just from your own experience, would such a report have been in writing
By
Mr. Mantashe?
yes, as a Secretary General, he always presented reports that were written.
So we may be able to see that at some stage.
I don't know.
Mr. Mantashe, may yet be asked about that inquiry because it is relevant as background to the development of the narrative in relation to investigations and the like, and what were the concerns of various people, both within government and outside of government. But we can leave that aside for the moment. Can we go to page 3 of the statement, where Mr. Maseko deals with his role at the Government Communication and Information Service, the GCIS. The GCIS, as I understand it, is the communication service
Yes,
under government rubric and control.
yes,
And that department resides within the presidency.
yes,
So in your term as president, you would have been directly responsible and accountable for the activities of GCIS, I understand.
it's a minister who's directly responsible for his activities.
Yes, you have a minister in
Yeah,
your
it reports to
department.
the minister.
And that minister was the late Collins Chabani at the time, I understand.
Yes,
Right. And I understand that GCIS had a responsibility for media buying. So where media wished to publish advertisements, they would be sourced through GCIS, as I understand.
I think you mean government departments. You said when media wanted, I think you mean government
Well,
departments. or
when
GCIS.
government departments wanted to place adverts in media, right?
Yes.
And when media would negotiate with various government departments, that was all done through GCIS, as I understand.
Yes, yes.
So GCIS was, as I understand the evidence of Mr. Maseko, responsible for the function of placing advertisements in the media, although the advertisements were paid for by the various departments.
Yes.
Do I understand it correctly? And as far as you know, is it correct that the total government expenditure on advertising was valued at around 600 million rand per annum?
Yes, I think so.
So the advertising spend for which GCIS was at least partially responsible, considerable amount of money, 600 million rand.
Yes.
Correct. And what Mr. Maseko says in paragraph 9, if you could have a look at it, the media buying function mentioned in paragraph 7 above was performed on an
that is still
agency
on page
basis
3.
on behalf of other departments.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius. Mr. Zuma is still trying to find the paragraph. It's still on page 3.
3,
and it's
paragraph 9.
paragraph 9.
Paragraph.
Sorry, Mr. Zuma.
Page 3 of Mr. Masego's statement, paragraph 9. Have you found it?
Yes, and it's page 3, the red numbering in the top right-hand corner.
Yes, red numbering.
Yes.
If it's page 3, is it page, is it 77?
You will see at the
top.
top, there would be letters, it's JGZ, and then 003. When Mr. Pretorius refers to a page, he won't mention 00, he'll just say 3. So, but it's the red numbers at the top.
Which is 3.
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
end.
so what
Okay.
might be confusing you is that it's 003.
Okay.
So he will just say 3, but he means the
last
003, yeah. Okay.
And just as a matter of politeness, Mr. Zuma, FP is former president.
FP.
Yes. So the reference has a full title.
Okay.
Yeah, the page numbers is written letters FP hyphen JGZ hyphen 003, but he will just say page 3. He won't mention the letters and the
page 3.
00.
If we may go then on that page to paragraph 9. It says, the media buying function mentioned in paragraph 7 above was performed on an agency basis on behalf of other departments. The budget for this function was allocated to the various line departments and not to the GCIS budget's votes. Is that a correct understanding of the position?
I think so.
And as I understand from what you said this morning, Mr. Zuma, you would have known that towards the end of 2010, that the Gupta brothers were intent, at your instance, as I understand it now, on setting up the New Age newspaper. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Then, also on page 3 at paragraph 10, Mr. Maseko says that around September, October 2010, I received a call from Mr. A.J. Gupta on my mobile number 0836450810 requesting a meeting to discuss what he said was a new project which he and his company were launching, which he indicated required government support. He says over the page that he knew Mr. A.J. Gupta, but that he was reluctant to accede to the request. He finally decided to accede to the request. Now, may I ask, did you have anything to do with arranging for Mr. Gupta to speak to Mr. Maseko?
No, I didn't.
In any event, a meeting took place. And on the date of the meeting, and that was during 2010, during September, October 2010, he says he received a call from the President's official residence. He says in paragraph 15 at the bottom of page 4, I identified the incoming number as I had had dealings with the residents previously. A female caller said the President wanted to speak to me. And then on page 5, paragraph 16, Mr. Maseko refers to the content of the call. Would you take a moment to read that, please?
Chair,
Yes.
may I request, Mr. Zuma, he reads font 18. Can I suggest that you read it if it's not too much for you?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Maybe I should ask you to read it. My accent not being what it should.
Okay, let me read paragraph 16 of Mr. Masego's affidavit at page 5. He says, the call was then transferred to the President. After the pleasantries, the President then said the following, and he quotes, Mfoka baba, kunala madoda akwaGupta. Ngifuna ukuthi uhlangane nabo futhi ubancede. Close quotes. The English translation is, that is Mr. Maseko continuing, open brackets, my brother, there are these Gupta guys who need to meet with you and who need your help. Please help them. That is paragraph 16. Your question then, Mr. Pretorius?
Well, that is the version of Mr. Maseko, and it's an opportunity for you, Mr. Zuma, to respond to that. I can ask you individual questions, or you can respond in general, however is more convenient. Perhaps I should ask, do you recall that happening?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't remember, because I normally called the DGs, particularly this one, to discuss a number of issues. I can't remember making this call. Also, in the Zulu word, I usually say mfanagit.
Yes.
I'm not fond of mfoka baba.
Yes.
It looks like somebody was trying to remember my common one in Zulu, was I always say mfanagit.
Yes.
I wouldn't know, but the issue of this new paper of the owners wanting to talk to the departments, but more importantly, the department of Maseko, it was a center point in terms of advertisement, whatever, or the other departments. So it is natural. They would want to talk to him. So I don't think there was anything out of the ordinary, whether there was a call or no call. But I don't remember making the call saying, Mfoka baba. Because I made a number of calls and really I can't say this one, I remember making it for that day to say this must happen.
Is the position that you say it might have happened, but you
It might
can't
have
recall
happened. Yeah,
It might have happened, but you can't recall.
absolutely.
Thank you.
So you used the word natural. Would it be natural for the Guptas to want to find support for their project? And you were in favor of the project, so it all fits in, as it were. There's nothing extraordinary about that, according to...
That's what I'm saying, because generally, the media houses discuss with this department their relations and the kind of operations they must undertake.
Yes. I must say, in fairness to you, Mr. Zuma, the precise words used are somewhat different from the words used by Mr. Maseko to the public protector. Maybe I could ask you, Chair, to read these onto the record. I'm willing to give it a try.
Well, is that document?
They're different.
Okay, sorry. I think Mr. Skakane wants to say something. Please come through so I can hear.
Chair, I think we better give this witness time to look at these things. Now, another document from elsewhere. He's got to read something else and try and remember whether it's this letter, whether it's this phrase or that phrase. I don't think it's fair. It's truly, truly unfair to the witness. While he's battling with something he hasn't seen, that his lawyers haven't seen, some laptop comes with something else elsewhere. I think he needs to get a chance.
My understanding, although Mr. Pretorius had not finished, I think my understanding was that since Mr. Zuma had indicated that he doesn't normally use the word Mfogababa, he normally uses Mfanagiti, I thought that Mr. Pretorius wanted to be fair to him to indicate that maybe Mr. Maseko might have used different wording before the public protector. I'm not sure. I don't think he meant to take that any further than just to say, you may be right because maybe elsewhere the different words were used. I'm not sure. I think that was my understanding of what he wanted to say, nothing more. Thank you.
Perhaps it wasn't an entirely elegant attempt, but I was trying to be fair to Mr. Zuma to say that
Yes.
other words were
used.
mentioned before the public protector.
Yes.
But in any event, what we can do is get those put onto a piece of paper and give them to Mr. Zuma to consider in his own time with advice.
Yeah.
But nothing much turns on it because we are really dealing with the meaning and import of the communication rather than the particular words used. Mr. Zuma, if and this is a hypothetical question, and I understand it may be difficult for you to answer, but if you had, and you do recall, or did recall, making that telephone call in order to assist the New Age project, I understand that you would have expected Mr. Maseko to take heed of your words. You're, after all, president, he's a DG.
No, not necessarily. I don't think so. DGs are the accounting officers. They do what is right, what they think is necessary to be done. No matter what else says, if it was somebody above them, they will say, but the rules does not accept this, even if you had said so. It's not therefore a given that if you say, can you do this, automatically they will. They are as accounting officers, they're very particular.
Yes, and in fact that's what occurred. Mr. Maseko didn't cooperate in terms of paragraph 16 and the communication in paragraph 16. But clearly, if such a communication had been made, it would have had a purpose. Am I correct?
I thought I think I've just answered that one.
Well, perhaps I should not try and put the question in particular words, but why would such a call be made?
Well, there could be. There could be reasons. There could be a reason, particularly if, as it were, this is a DG who deals with the matters of relating to the media. Whether you knew or you didn't know, that perhaps since I'm just making it,
Sure, I
as
understand.
you put it, since media are supported for advertisement, you could make that point, either emanating from your knowledge or whatever.
So what we do have here is, as I understand what you're saying, is the possibility of a call, natural is the word you used, being made to Mr. Maseko saying, these people need your help, please help them. Okay. The substance of that communication is fairly clear. I don't want to debate that unnecessarily with you because we're debating a hypothetical situation.
But
Yes.
if such, whether it's made or not made, if such a call is made, would that call have moved away from the normal procedures? Would it be trying to compel the DG to do a wrong thing or whatever, even if the call was made or not made?
I understand what you're saying, is you're saying nothing in the content of that call, as alleged by Mr. Maseko, is an attempt to persuade anyone to do anything unlawful. It's merely a request to help. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Right, I understand. But lawful or unlawful, it is a request to help, and the maker of that request might have expected that request to be heeded. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made it. Do I understand the position correctly?
Absolutely. There are many DGs, not necessarily in this matter. Some people see the president and say, look, I've got a project or I can do this kind of thing. But maybe it's difficult to get to some people. And when I say to the person who's talking to me, I hear you, but I'm not dealing with this, I'll take the matter forward. And then I phone the DG. I met this character. They might even give me numbers, you deal with it. Mine is to help facilitate the kind of the meeting that they would be needing.
Right. And then in paragraphs 15 to 16, on pages 4 and 5 of Mr. Gupta's statement, Mr. Maseko's statement about the Guptas,
Per page?
if you look at page 4,
Page 4, okay.
paragraph 15, and page 5, which we've dealt with, paragraph 16. It seems that according to Mr. Maseko, that call was made to him on the very day of the meeting. And the inferences, I think, which you may want to deal with, is that the call being made on the very day of the meeting with the Guptas by yourself, you would have known that the meeting was taking place. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, whether the call was made or not, it could be a different day, it could be that day.
Well, may I ask you, did you know that the meeting was to take place? Can you
No,
recall?
not at all.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
But as I know, as I knew, they were meeting generally people to discuss the matter, that this new thing. And at some point, they would have talked to him.
Then, at page 5, paragraph 23, Mr. Maseko sets out the content of the conversation between himself and Mr. A.J. Gupta. You may want to take a moment to read on page 6, paragraphs 24 to 29, and then over the page, paragraph 30 to 31, before I ask you for your knowledge about that, and any comment that you may have in relation to what was discussed.
Well,
Again, it's in very small print. Are you comfortable to read that?
I wonder whether, Mr. Pretorius, you wouldn't tell him the points that Mr. Maseko makes in those paragraphs and see whether with that he is not enabled to answer your question.
All right.
But if he needs to read, then we can take it from there.
All right. Let's deal with paragraph 24, and I'll try and deal with the matter point by point. Paragraph 24 says that Mr. A.J. Gupta told Mr. Maseko that the Gupta family was setting up a media company which needed government support in the form of advertising spend. The company would have interests in print media and a TV station. There's nothing controversial about that, I suppose. It's consistent, as I understand it, with what you said this morning.
Yes?
And then paragraph 25 says, he, that is Mr. Gupta, then went on, it should read, to tell me that he was aware that government was spending about 600 million rand on advertising and media platforms, and he wanted all that expenditure to be transferred to his company, the would-be media company. In essence, he wanted the total budget to be utilized for advertising in the television and newspaper businesses the Gupta family was setting up. The essence of what Mr. Maseko says he was told there was that Mr. Gupta said he wants the whole 600 million rand budget to be utilized to support the television and newspaper business the Gupta family was setting up. Do you have any knowledge of the extent of the request?
Sorry. Yeah.
No, I have no knowledge. I have no knowledge of that.
He then says in paragraph 26, I then proceeded to explain how the budget and procurement process worked and why it would not be possible to transfer the whole budget to his company. I told him that in any case the budget didn't sit with us at GCIS and that we merely acted as an agency for the respective government departments. What Mr. Maseko said there is that is correct, as I understand your previous answers, that the budget was the expenditure of the budget on advertising was ultimately accountable to the departments concerned.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have any comment if such a request had been made that the whole 600 million be allocated to the television and newspaper businesses the Gupta family was setting up? Would that be proper, improper?
I don't think I should comment. I mean, he was making his own point or taking his own chances. That's his own business.
It does seem.
I don't want to comment on that one.
It does seem that it would be taking a chance, as you put it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. He then says in paragraph 27, he dismissed my explanation and proceeded to tell me that my job is to go and identify, collect, and allocate all the communication budget amounts in the various departments to his company. Would the same comment apply, that
Absolutely.
it seems to be taking a chance? Then he said something interesting in paragraph 28. He said, he then told me that I should let him know if any department or minister gives me any problems, and he would deal with them directly. I asked him to elaborate, and he told me that he will personally summon and deal with any minister who doesn't cooperate in this regard. Apart from taking a chance, it seems to be a fairly confident statement, to put it at its least, as related by Mr. Maseko, if it had been said. If Mr. Maseko is to be believed, he was told that Mr. Gupta could deal with any minister he likes, who doesn't follow his suggestion. Do you have any comment on that? Would it be
No.
possible for Mr. Gupta to have said that?
No, I don't have a comment because I don't know why Mr. Gupta was saying that. I mean, you can ask him.
Well, did he have
can
that
tell
power,
better.
to your knowledge?
Sorry?
Did he have that power, to your knowledge, to tell ministers what to do?
Why should he have the power to tell ministers? He had nothing to do with ministers.
That's simply the question I'm asking, Mr. Zuma. He then goes on in paragraph 29 to say, matters such as the inappropriateness of what he is saying and the impropriety of trying to obtain government business in this manner did not seem to matter to Mr. A.J. Gupta. The comment Mr. Maseko makes is a fairly clear comment about the conduct of Mr. Gupta. Mr. Gupta, if he did say it, and you've, together with my questioning, put it fairly succinctly as being confident or taking a chance, did you have any idea that Mr. Gupta was going to these lengths, if Mr. Maseko's evidence is true?
Idea of?
Well, let's put it frankly, the chances that Mr. Gupta was taking as reflected on page 6. Did you have any idea that he was going to these lengths to secure the whole advertising budget of the departments for advertising?
I mean, I had nothing to do with his discussion with Maseko.
Yes.
Why should I have an idea? What is he going to say? I
Well,
mean,
that's precisely the question I'm asking, because what is happening here is that in a project initiated by yourself in cooperation with the Gupta family, there is an attempt with not a little persuasion, forceful persuasion, to solicit the full 600 million rand expenditure on advertising and media platforms that the government is responsible for. It seems on the face of it, and Mr. Maseko certainly thought so, that this was an improper approach, certainly backed as it was by the threatened paragraph 28. Would you agree with that?
absolutely, because Maseko was doing his job. He couldn't, when somebody comes and make that kind of thing as a DG, not stick to your procedure.
So if that had happened, we can agree that the Guptas were acting entirely out of line and improperly.
I'm sure. I'm sure that to say I take the whole budget, etc. I mean, I don't want to enter that discussion because I don't know what was the intention. But I can't just unpack it because I know nothing about the discussion that took place between those two. I'm sure Gupta can explain better.
Yes, I understand.
Of course, I'm sorry. Of course, if after that meeting between Mr. Maseko and Mr. Gupta, a report had been made to you that Mr. Maseko had agreed to give the whole budget of 600 million rand to one newspaper, you would have found that quite strange, to say the least.
Then my DG, you will explain why he had to do so.
Yes.
Why was he doing that?
Yes. But it would be something,
But it would be something
unexpected.
Unexpected, yes.
Yes.
And indeed improper. If it had happened, as Mr. Maseko said, let's just place these questions in context. You are being given an opportunity, Mr. Zuma, to comment on Mr. Maseko's version. The chair has not made up his mind yet as to whether that version should be accepted or not. This is just part of our own investigation process, this questioning. So on the assumption that Mr. Maseko was telling the truth here, as I understand your version, it would at the very least be unexpected and something that would call for an explanation. Had he agreed to it?
I think I've answered that question, sir.
He says in paragraph 31 that he reported the incident to Mr. Frank Chikane, who was a former Director General in the presidency. Now, in 2010, October, do you know where Mr. Chikane held a post?
Sorry?
In other words, would Mr. Chikane have reported to you in any capacity at that time? You see, if I may take you to paragraph 31 on page 7. You will see that this incident was reported, according to Mr. Maseko, by himself to Mr. Frank Chikane, a former Director General in the presidency. Did you receive any report from Mr. Frank Chikane?
No. Those
It
matters,
says
these are
former.
these are operational matters between the DG and the DGs and people at that level.
Yes.
We don't deal with those matters really.
Right.
They don't have to be reported to the president. Chair, while she's reading,
Yes.
could I just
would
go
like
and wash
an
my hands
adjournment?
outside for a minute?
Well, we are at 10 to 4. We normally stop at 4. Maybe we should stop now and then proceed tomorrow. I think that would be more convenient.
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
We will adjourn now and resume tomorrow. Sorry.
Sorry, I've got adjourned.
Sorry, yes. Thank you very much. We will adjourn now for the day and we'll start at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. We adjourn.